Today's chat is brought to you by the support of all our Twitch subscribers. Through the patronage you provide the Focus Fire chat team through the Twitch platform, we are able to provide you with the weekly podcast as well as the website and other aspects of Focus Fire chat. If you have any interest in becoming a subscriber of the FFC and gaining access to some exclusive features over in the Discord server, please be sure to visit our Twitch account and click on the subscribe button. If you're an Amazon Prime member, remember that you do have a free subscription to Twitch every month that can be used for this. And for those of you who are already subscribers, thank you again for your generosity.
Welcome to Focus Fire Chat. Explore together.
Welcome to Focus Fire Chat, recorded live on February 14th, 2020 over on twitch.tv/FocusFireChat. As always, I want to give a big shout out to our live chat here with us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us once again. This week's episodes are going to be focused around exploring vampirism in Destiny. This particular episode is going to be what we have come, or this particular episode will serve as what we have come to call the advanced session of the week's exploration. Congratulations to those who signed up for a deeper dive and who stuck with me through that terrible introduction. Before we go any further, however, let's run through a quick introduction of who all we have left with us on the show. As always, this is your host, Blue Crew 86.
I don't have anything prepared, so it's just Green-Eyed Music Lover.
Oh, yes. She is still with us, though.
Damn, I've survived.
And last but definitely not least, in the hot seat as guest co-hosts, we have our good friends Raz and Wykid. Guys, you still with us? Is the coffee still flowing?
The coffee is still flowing.
There's liquid in me, but it's not coffee.
Sanguination happening.
Sorry, I chewed.
Chew.
I chewed.
Well, I know Green had hopes to focus us in on some specific examples, so enough with my introductory chatter. Let's just jump right into it. So, Green,
bring it.
Where do you want us to go first?
Want us to start with the Vex, because we talked about the Hive in the introduction episode, at least in a very generalized sense, and I know we're probably going to get back to them because they're the biggest example in some respects, but I want to go into the Vex in particular because we have a few notions of the Vex draining the light from Saint 14, and there's aspects of the Radioloria as well that show up in the hallucinations and whatnot. So I kind of want to dive into that in particular. From anyone?
I mean, go for it, Wykid.
Yes,
No, go for it, Wykid, because I'm gonna.
That is all you.
Yeah, I am literally I have an idea, but it's not like a really strong one. So Wykid, go for it.
Not forming at all.
Well, okay, because I'm still trying to figure. And I was. God. Green, can you give me a?
So I would venture to say that the Vex aren't necessarily vampiric because they create a machine. They create was a hive mind, or not a hive mind,
martyr
but a mind to siphon Saint.
Yeah, they created the martyr mind to do that, and it took them. They created an artificial, it's basically an IV drip, and they're trying to exsanguinate him, but they're not. It's like saying that a doctor who's bleeding somebody is a vampire. It's not really that wire is not really connecting in my brain,
right?
Because it's I wouldn't consider the Vex vampiric.
I will say there's a couple of different things about it that could be, I guess, contributed to being vampiric behaviors. Because when I specifically with the Saint 14 incident, with them draining his light, one of the things that was about they were keying into the frequency of his light. It
was very mechanical. It wasn't.
It was mechanical, but at the same time, it goes back to that concept of eating your enemy's flesh to be able to adapt their strengths. In the same kind of way, I would see the Vex as kind of using his light to attune their own capabilities so that they could defeat him. So that using that same kind of concept of taking one's strength and making it their weakness because you're using it against them. But that would be.
Yeah, but is that vampiric?
I don't.
like, I mean, that's more like blood magic than.
Yeah.
I mean, that's even a stretch, to be honest. That's not really. I mean, I don't. That's like. I mean, I can see that being like considered like a shamanistic ritual if you really want to stretch the magic reference. But like,
because they're not really doing anything like because
like again,
like extend their existence or whatever.
Yeah, they're not augmenting their strength with it. They're literally weakening him. They're if anything, they're vampire hunters, which is an also fascinating twist if you really want to think about it. Because I mean, they are weakening. They're the good guys. Have that fun fact bouncing around in your head.
Great.
We're the bad guys. But like, yeah, I can't. Like every example of Vex siphoning light it's in regards to weakening something, not in regards to strengthening themselves.
Okay. So what about? So I want to go to. I'm going to shift gears a bit. Topics that were brought to my attention through different community members throughout the week. So don't think this is just me being random. The shadows.
You're totally random.
Totally random. The shadows of Yore.
So
they're not necessarily vampiric in some respects, but at the same time, they're also dealing in some darker magics of things.
I would argue that there could be a case made that they might be vampiric, depending upon how deep into the hive rituals that are taught and learned about within that community, just how far they delve into it. Because that's something that the hive does is feed on the light.
Right.
It's something that the Taken do. So depending on
and they also use light to purify their weapons.
Correct.
I mean, so which is more akin to bloodletting than anything, but
yes. I guess one of the reason I didn't go into the weapons part is because in those instances, I almost consider the weapons themselves more vampiric than the people who are using them.
Yes, very much so. Yeah. Well, and that's true. So, but I mean, if you're going to look at the weaponsmithing of the shadows, that's more of like quenching the blade in blood than actually imbuing blood.
Vampiric is all hell.
Well, okay, right. But if the weapon, if you're going to ignore the fact that the weapon has a degree of sentience, which, I mean, let's just pretend it's a normal...
You were literally projectile thorns. You were casting freaking stakes at people. Okay,
you're casting magic missile at the darkness, okay? You cast magic missile at the darkness. That's how you do it. Is it darkness? I cast magic missile at it.
Oh my god!
Oh my gosh! Magic missile at the darkness made of. Oh my gosh! Really, that one?
This is why we can't have nice things.
It was grafted from the wizard?
Zior.
That piece, yeah.
And it wasn't grafted from the wizard. It was grafted from her betrothed.
Oh, the knight.
Yeah.
But
okay. So, anyways, the shadows. Man, I can see I can see them.
Like I said,
I can see it maybe, but like to me, it's almost more of like it's almost more of what is it? Thermatology or thaumaturgy? Thank you.
Thaumaturgy.
You're welcome.
It's more of that, or maybe even no, it's not really necromancy because they're not really doing that, but like they're. Because they're literally unmaking themselves to remake themselves. I mean, they are consuming. And with Yor, the problem with Yor also is that Yor would be close to a vampire, if not a vampire, because we have an instance of him literally consuming the light of a random passerby. In lore, we have a conversation where he calls out the fact that you're not a guardian, but you still have a spark of light, and nom nom nom. I'm gonna nom you. That's
would
a
you
vampire.
Consider that right?
That's a vampire.
But would you consider that more like the energy vamp type thing? Rather, I mean, there's no group in Destiny because of the way that the game is made, where there's not any blood per se. That there's not going to be anybody sanguinating anyone else. so we're not necessarily going to have that in Destiny, or do we?
Well, I would argue. I would argue that we do. It's just not blood.
Light.
I mean, the Hive are, again, I know we said we were coming back to him. Well, the Hive, I mean, Omar.
Yep.
Omar was literally hung up and his light was filleted off him and fed to the Hivelings, I guess you would call them. Is Hiveling what they refer? I call them Hivelings. They're baby hives. Anyways.
Yeah. With the shadows, though, so... In all honesty, I think they are. I think that they absolutely are, because the rituals that were involved in creating just the thorn itself, thinking about what we did in order to make our thorn, not the one that Yor was using, obviously, because we find out with Shin later on, but just between the lessons that we learned from the one that was from the books written by
Vale.
Well, it wasn't written by Vale. It was written
by
Tevin. Just the description that he goes into as far as the lessons that Yor was passing down from the ship and their translations of it. Granted, it was like 2 or 3 times removed as far as, the exactness of the information. Like, we went along and followed their path to the weaponsmith, or to the Hive Weapons of Sorrow weaponsmith that they have. And along the way, we found dead guardians. We were tracking this Hive weaponsmith for the Weapons of Sorrow. Now, one of the things I found interesting about the Weapons of Sorrow in particular is that they're weapons that are used by human beings. and I've got my own whole list of theories and my own spinful as far as the Weapons of Sorrow themselves and how the last one fits in with. But with the Shadows of Yor themselves, part of what they had to do, they had to be willing to make some moral sacrifices. So I don't think it's beyond them to have gotten to the point where they were consuming other guardians. It's more of being very picky about which guardians they kill and consume in them.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, personally, I view Weapons of Sorrow as Trojan horses, but I mean,
Yes.
A little bit of beer.
Well, because again, going back to what Wykid said, they're only used by guardians, really, and they tend to corrupt the guardians that they are being used by.
Well, I don't necessarily think it's that they're corrupting the guardians. I think it's a manifestation of corruption.
Oh, that's true too. Yeah, but it's the insidiousness of how they are. That's what I mean by a Trojan horse. Is it's something that's like, hey, it's a weapon, and we all know how guardians are with weapons. They're like, we're gonna do whatever it takes to get this gun. And it's like,
Whisper.
Are you? Yes. Yes, I'm going to do whatever it takes. But, okay.
Just a question, though, when it comes to Whisper in particular. Right? You mentioned Whisper, and chat mentioned Touch of Malice. Neither of those, it's Touch of Malice. It was hurting the user.
Yeah, but see, I beg the question, were those Weapons of Sorrow, though?
No, they're not necessarily.
Okay, sorry.
I'm shifting a little bit because chat brought it up. And Whisper doesn't hurt you when you shoot it, right? It was only Touch of Malice that had that.
Only Touch of Malice does that.
No, Whisper just talks to you a lot.
Its own.
What happens when you
whisper?
Yeah, happy creepy whispers.
What happens when you carry a worm god in your back pocket?
That's fine.
But the Touch of Malice, isn't that almost like a reverse?
Touch of Malice was basically Oryx's insurance plan.
Right, I realize that like the major concept of the gun is it's Oryx's essence within the gun itself, but the pulling energy from you is almost a reversal of the actual vampire story. It's the gun itself is vampiric to you.
See, I always took Touch of Malice to be like, if anything, a manifestation of the sword logic. I didn't, which I mean, like, sword logic, I don't view as vampiric. I view that as Darwinism on steroids, like the bad kind. I don't know. I'll be blunt. I never really played with Touch of Malice, so I don't know as far as like game mechanics what it does.
So
I know it makes quack noises. Thanks, Justin.
Wicked, do you want to?
Yeah.
Talk
So
about that?
So with Touch of Malice, essentially what ends up happening is when you're firing it, you get so many rounds of actually just free firing the weapon before the weapon actually starts to consume you. It'll actually damage you unless you're getting kills on something else. So whenever you start getting kills against other players, it replenishes your health, and then the weapon will slowly start eating down your health again. So that's where
The reason why
sword
is-
logic comes in. Go ahead. Sorry.
And your health is it allows you to not have to reload. It's your free reload, which is why in the Kingsfall raid, people would stand in a well, which would automatically regenerate your health, and just
Quack, 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 quack,
exactly.
quack, quack.
Such a Malice would never run out of ammo because you had never ran out of health.
And you also get bonus damage on the rounds that go past the magazine, correct? Or on the last
Yeah,
round?
there was
Believe so.
something. Yeah, there was something that they got additional DPS for. All I know is that when
So-
you have a fire team of 5 things going quack, 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 it's hilarious.
It is pretty funny, but
it
like
is.
Black Flag has a good description. It's a symbiotic relationship where if you kill fast enough with the gun, it won't kill you.
Okay.
Similar terms.
Mhm.
So similar to a worm pack then.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah,
Symbiotic / parasitic relationship.
those always work out in the end.
In some ways, except for we can put the gun down.
Yeah. We
Yeah, we
don't
can
have.
actually because the
we
tower got
don't-
destroyed.
Yeah, but did the gun get destroyed?
Talk about that.
Banshee's kind of hiding in a cage somewhere.
Banshee, I'm more worried about the Cryptarchs.
Oh God.
Tarks with Touch of Malice. That would be amusing.
Well, they have the vault that they. Anyways, that's a whole different theory.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, I guess going back to Shadows. Is that where we were? Shadows.
Mhm.
We were talking about the shadows.
I don't know. When I hear vampire in Destiny, I'll be honest, my brain jumps to Hive and kind of stops there. Like I can see Guardians as light, like pseudo vampires, like Damphirs, but
That's a terrifying thought.
but I mean, right? They kind of are. If we're gonna,
yeah.
I mean, they kind of are.
I mean, I'm not entirely.
Okay.
So
Explain
sorry.
why for the people who never played
So-
White Wolf.
Damphire's not. I don't think Damphire's
It's
white.
not even just White Wolf.
I was like, were Damphire's even in White Wolf?
Yeah.
Were they? Okay. I mean, Damphire's are.
You get to
they're-
13, 14 generation, and then the Damphir show up.
Oh, okay.
Thin
okay.
Blood, the End Times, the
Yeah.
Crescent Mark Lilith. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
cleared out at the end.
Okay, so Damphirs are basically half vampires. Like they're half mortal, half something, half vampire. So like when I refer
It's basically
to
two 14th and 15th generations boinked, and then magically a Damphir shows up. There's the most logical shortwave way of explaining it.
generations
Just
being
just drops it off.
generations
Vampires can actually
translation
they can-
generations
they can-
translation being the number of instances from the
Cain.
from Cain or the progenitor.
Yeah,
Like
the progenitor.
the big progenitor, not
The big
not
guy.
like not the progenitor of your vampire, but like the the first
beginning.
progenitor.
the beginning
So
and
like
the end.
as you get like higher up in or lower in generation
Lower.
numbers, you get in White Wolf's realms, you get significantly more powerful.
Unless you're the third generation.
No,
Oops.
that's terrifying.
Let's talk about the second and the third generation. Come on.
Oh gosh. Okay, so
Let's just talk about Ravenloft and be done with it.
that's where we're heading, and nobody wants to go there.
Ravenloft. Let's go visit Dracula.
All right.
Cathedral.
Oh, okay. So yeah, that's a good point. In chat right now, they're talking about Callus and the substance that is in the chalice. I mean, like I can see that degree being again vampiric. I don't know if I would call Cabal vampires.
Would it be vampiric or just cannibalistic?
Yeah.
that
Well,
feels That one feels more to me cannibalistic.
They do derive strength, right? Because they grow. What is it? Grow fat.
They grow fat from strength
or whatever. Mm-hmm. So they do have a degree of they consume, and I get
this callus. I don't know.
I mean, I can see Callus's chalice being something of a blood sacrifice for sure. Even because I mean, well, technically it is on a planetary level, because it's literally the ground up. It's well, and Black Flag is true. Like I mean, yeah, that's true. Callus isn't really. You could argue Callus isn't a Cabal anymore either.
True,
but I mean, I guess from the Cabal sense, they have. If anything, I would see the Cabal almost like a Aztecan equivalency. Like, you know, they make their blood sacrifices and they gain strength from that. That's the
dresser fits, that's for sure.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but you're right. It actually does really well.
Mm-hmm.
But that's again, that's not. I would argue that. I would personally think that would not be vampirism technically, but more of blood magic.
Oh, thaumaturgical.
Yeah, definitely thaumaturgical.
Oh yeah.
Sorry. Okay, so I've used that term a couple times, and I just realized no one probably knows what that is. Thaumaturgy is blood magic. It's basically magic that is using it's using the power of the life force stored within blood. To be basically the component that gives power to a spell. That's really a boiled down definition of it.
It was very dumb, basic version.
So Vuru brought up a funny one.
Oh no.
Vuru brought up
God, no,
here we go.
You know, I'm not entirely surprised that it came up. Like
Drifter's just hungry. I don't think. Like he's
Drifter,
not
you know what?
Drifter's the corner pot dealer that just can't stop eating.
Drifter is the Donner Party of the Guardians.
Jesus.
Like he really is. Like
he really is.
He's just obsessed with eating. Like,
hey man, I'll sell you these cheeseburgers. Don't ask what they are though. No.
Gosh.
Hey, did you see the group of Guardians that went into the Gambit? No, I don't know where they went. Do you want some pork butt? I got some good barbecue over here.
Drifter is the main reason why I actually enjoyed Callus's little fanboy written book. Just the way that he died. I pictured the bunny rabbit. I pictured the bunny rabbit on Wreck-It Ralph.
Oh,
he just keeps putting it.
Oh no! I mean, you're not wrong.
I can't unsee it. Shit.
Yeah, Drifter, I would say, is Donner Party more than a vampire. He's a Wendigo.
Tastes like long pork.
Was it pulled pork?
Tastes like long pork.
You mentioned the Karnstein armlets. Do you want to talk a little bit about it? I know that we had the snapshot, but do you want to talk about it on the show?
I mean, so I guess the biggest thing with Karnstein armlets is that it is referencing a guardian. So a guardian did create the armlets, and it's basically like this slight passive nod to what happens. What is this guardian? Like, is this guardian actually Carmilla that has been reincarnated? Which is also just like the possibility of that is just, for me, really fascinating. But really, more than anything, you know, I kind of looked at it from Carmilla as like a psychological point of view, because Carmilla is also very heavily a story of abuse, like significantly abuse. And so like the Karnstein armlets actually beg the question, if you are doing what the Karnstein armlets are asking you, which is basically using them, you're actually helping an abuser hunt down their victim, which is, it's a really kind of a interesting mind game to play. As far as like connections to the vampire, you know, really that the connection to the vampire itself is in the name. That was really kind of it. Right. It does use what they refer to as a neuromech trawl, and the point of that is that it's literally scouring the neural pathways of the victim that is being struck for any they're referred to as engrams, but they're basically memories of the target, which is, if you're going to go with the Carmilla route, would be Laura. That's really a rough synopsis of what the snapshot talks about, with the question of like, are we the hunter? Are we going to take the role of the person who enables the abuser and who helps the vampire hunt down its prey? Or are we, do you have a choice? Like, are you going to be a vampire hunter, or are you going to be a vampire thrall?
Here's the one that I was really wanting to dive into. This is the idea of xenophage. So in xenophage, and that has been transformed
again,
or not by choice, of course. Cards that Bungie actually curses in, which I think is kind of fun. They were just trying to kill me. They were using me to get to my light, to drain it from my soul. For their 6 5 here, but the concept of transforming the prey, the obvious transforming the prey into the vampire as well. Is there examples of a type of vampire that does this to their prey?
That transforms the victim?
Mm-hmm.
Or wait, like, oh, you mean like enthralls them? Like transform? So you mean transforms the victim into a vampire? Or you mean transform it like... Sorry, I'm not following the question.
So in the card, the Guardians transformed into essentially the bug that is in xenophage.
Supposedly, right.
So I'm something smaller now.
The
vengeance, it's the focal, like super focused into vengeance and everything and ready to hurt things, but into something other, not themselves, not into something that they themselves ever wanted to be, but something into hateful, wanting to get vengeance of some way, shape, or form. And I mean, this one's Omar. Omar is basically not necessarily transformed into a vampire himself, but he's hungry to get his own vengeance on the Hive who transformed him into this.
Right. So counterpoint to that, when you talk about phage as like a part of like bacteriophage, bacteriophages literally translates into eater of bacteria. The entire point of the phage is to destroy the bacteria. A phage is something that is basically a virus that infects and replicates within a bacteriophage would infect and replicate within the bacteria. So when you have a xenophage, it's something that would be literally an eater of xeno, which is alien. So your xenophage has been replicated, i.e. you have the bug worm, and it is obsessed with destroying xenos, the xenoforms. Right. So now my further conclusion, or my further kind of point here, is like we also have weapons that have AI, sentient AI. So I really bet, I'm just throwing it out there that this could be a situation where it's not actually Omar. It's a weapon AI that has been designed as a xenophage, like a literal xenophage, and it has taken on the guise to make that logical leap for wanting that revenge into the form of a guardian who has been killed.
Okay.
Which would make infinitely more sense than a third resurrection into a bug of a guardian.
Regardless, they were draining him.
Right, yeah.
Experiment, which is the vampiric side of the thing. But is there any...
So, I mean, you have vampires...
Instances of it being transformed.
Yeah, you have instances within, Dracula. He does this to Lucy. He makes her into a thrall. Or I think the other term that they'll use sometimes is a ghoul. Though that's confusing because ghouls are also... Well, anyways, thralls are usually the term that they use. And that's basically someone who is literally enthralled to the vampire. And sometimes you can have them where they will literally feed blood back to the victim in order to develop that connection. usually within most vampiric mythos, like the vampire will feed on whatever victim. Now, if the vampire feeds and doesn't kill that victim, which is a big thing, like if they're setting them up to be a feeder, what they can also do is they can feed back their own blood to that victim, which will then enthrall that individual to the vampire. It won't make them a vampire, because the catalyst to become a vampire is death. Like the individual would have to die. And then there's, depending on the myth, you have different processes and all that. Yeah, I mean, pick your culture, you're gonna have a different process. Like it's ridiculous how random and all that. But like the concept of like psychologically morphing them and enslaving them, I guess in a way, that would be in a way changing them. Like they don't make them, Renfield aside, because Renfield's a psychotic special case. Like Lucy, she didn't become a vampire until she died, and she became a fledgling basically, and that's when she actually began feeding on other children, so that's when she began feeding on the children. But while she was alive and enthralled to Dracula, like she never displayed the hunger that a vampire would display. She just wasted away. Like she eventually he literally drained her, and she died, and then he resurrected her as a because he was recreating his, it's not really a harem, but it was his brood, I guess. I don't know what would be the best term for that. He was recreating the 3 brides that had been across the ocean, and she was the first. And so like when he did that, that's when she actually changed and actually began hunting. But like
Vampire mythos, the direct need, like the have to hunt aspect of it.
Well, like the hunger,
live.
like that hunger that
right.
what's referred to as I think it's sanguinism. That generally doesn't exist. Renfield within the Dracula mythos, Renfield is a character who is obsessed with Dracula, but really honestly, you never really see Dracula like. It's hinted that Dracula is feeding off Renfield, and there's a lot of hints that Renfield is aware of Dracula, but like he finally gets gifted right before he dies, and he's like in a euphoric state. But like Renfield is the only one that, while he is still alive, is obsessed with sanguination. And it's also it's really strongly argued that that's not because of Dracula's influence. It's because Renfield is, I mean, forgive me, but he's batshit insane. Like he is completely off his rocker, and he just fixates on Dracula because, again, Dracula has that magnetic personality of power. Renfield as a psychopath, his psychotic break is around the obsession of consumption of power. And so he fixates on Dracula as the strongest entity and serves him of his own free will. Lucy, like social commentary in the book aside, Lucy is probably the best example of an Omar figure, if you would. And she is fed upon until she dies. And then that's when the transformation, like that's when Dracula forces that transformation on her. And then they eventually will kill her. They go out and kill her, which is where I think it's Quincy. And then that's where they kind of bond in the story. But so, I mean, the transformation is something that death is a catalyst for. So I guess in that sense, the xenophage entry, if we're going to take it on face value, would be vampiric, again, because the hive are involved. And if the hive are vampires, then they could create a hybridization. It's interesting to me though, because like that's where the similarities would stop, because within the vampiric mythos, when Dracula creates Lucy as a vampire, or as a whatever you want to call her, she's there is no Lucy left. Like, Lucy's dead. She is a shell, and she is if anything, she's an animal. Like, her base desire, her base drive is she is hungry and she needs to eat. She will not attack Dracula, or it's implied that she won't go against Dracula. We never see Lucy and Dracula interact after she's dead. Like we do. There's never a scene with the two of them. So, like, with the xenophage being obsessed with destruction of the hive is an interesting twist, if that's, if we want to go down that connection, because the victim that would become a vampire, like White Wolf is a really good example of this. Like, the vampire creates a child, is what's referred to, the child and the sire. The child can't do direct harm to its sire, because by doing direct harm to its sire, it actually in turn hurts itself, because they're connected by the process of the gift of the unlife. Now, that's a role-playing game, so there's a little bit of, modern woo-hoo thrown in there.
Oh, yeah. And it's not just the role-playing game that you have that aspect. It shows up in the Jim Butcher books as well. Like, it's a modern take on it. If you kill the sire, the generations below
that's actually
will...
That's from Dracula. Dracula has the same logic as well, because they, at the end, which, that's one of the reasons they kill Dracula, is because they're trying to save Minna, and the only way they can save Minna is to stop the transformation at its root, which is Dracula. So that's why they stake and behead him, is because Minna is transforming into a vampire in the same way that Lucy was, and they can't stop it. And so in order to cease the corruption, that's the entire driving force behind, the major driving force behind the killing of Dracula. So the connection, the connection between, and that goes back to, that's even like human, the lineage of genealogy is kind of there. It's not as drastic. Like, if you were to kill a parent, the child is not going to die, really. But like, the genealogical connection would be severed, like that family heir, or that family line would. Right. In a way it would be, but not as extreme, which goes back into mythology being very, very black and white and extreme. Like, a lot.
Let's talk about
legends.
The hive, since they're the biggest tie into it, because you talk about the lineage of everything. Now, granted, killing the head of the snake doesn't necessarily make everything else falter. We killed Oryx, then he still has remnants within his brood, as well as Zavathun and her brood. But the hive themselves, the krill, were they vampiric before we ever got to the point of the worm, or was that?
They were cannibalistic, but they were not. I don't think they were vampiric. I could be wrong. We know they were cannibalistic though, because they ate the sisters, right?
Yes. Yeah. The what is it? The osmium court.
No, the hydrogen court ate the osmium quartz. There was another court, and it ate the sisters. Helium breakers. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so there was, Neocultal is talking about ritualistic cannibalism. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They were sacrificed.
And it was like, it was called out as kind of being like, oh, well, crap.
This is
like,
normal.
Yeah, it was like,
So
darn it, they drew the short straw. They were at home when they came visiting.
Is it the worms themselves that are the actual vampiric? Because there's some vampire stories that I had that it's more of like the parasite within them that is the actual
going back to
vampiric.
The strain.
I'm going back to the strain, as well as a few other stories that are out there.
That's like one of the theories about where the origin of vampirism kind of crops up is I think it's tuberculosis, the wasting disease. But yeah, no, I mean, I would argue that the worms are, and which is actually was going to be my comment when you said, well, we killed Oryx, but his brood didn't die. Right. Oryx isn't necessarily the progenitor, though. Because remember, you have the you have the 5 worm gods. And so and I don't know, like, I don't know how much of an accurate parallel they're drawing here, but I'd be curious if you actually managed to take out one of those worm gods, like legitimately, not like Akka it, like actually removed the worm god, what would happen to its brood? Because each one of those worm gods has its own brood, even within the court of Oryx. There's knights, you know, the I just blanked on them. The knights that guard Crota's swords.
I know who you're talking about too.
Right. There's one knight for each of the worm gods is basically what I'm going for.
Oh, the Swarm Prince?
Yes. Yeah. There's a prince for each worm, except for Zol, which is really fun. Which goes into a completely different conspiracy theory that I have that I'm not going to get into. But there is a prince for each of the worm gods. And so to me, that tells me that each of their... And then like when we finally did get access to the Dreadnought, we had each worm god had its own chest. Like there was there was chest for each one of the worm gods. So like the Swarm Princes... Yeah, sorry, chat's talking about the Swarm Princes were the ones who guarded the sword of Crota. They weren't Crota, like they held in their name Swarm Prince yada yada of Zul or of Akka or whatever. Akka was the one that they didn't have. That was what it was. So yeah, thank you, Mind Map of Osiris, for that. Yeah, God, Swarm Prince. Oh, it's Swarm. Yeah. Anyways, yeah, I would say the worm gods would be more accurately the vampiric force, which brings us to the Ahamkara.
Okay. I'm going to let somebody else take the lead on this one as far as like asking questions, because I don't even know which direction to go with this one. It's the wishing.
It is. It's a psychological. It's a psychological vampirism, and you still have the modeling of the O blank mine. As a I can't remember what it was called. Is it a Kabbalah? Is that what they referred to it as? I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was basically the structure of that phrase imprisons the wisher. It's basically psychologically doing what the worm gods do to light, to the individual's light. Like I kind of have a feeling that they consume the same thing. It's just the manner of consumption is different. Kabbalah. Kabbalah. It looks like something that would taste really good.
It look like kebab.
Kebabs.
The kebabs of the Ahamkara.
I like kebabs.
Is the Ahamkara... I don't know. Are they really vampiric though in the psychological sense, rather than more like a djinn?
Yeah, but see, I would argue djinn are slightly vampiric. Well, it depends on what djinn you're talking about.
Yeah, right.
I would say that the Ahamkara definitely are.
Some can be vampiric, and I think the Ahamkara they derive sustenance from granting wishes. Like that was one of the things.
At the same time, those wishes
psychic
rarely
vampire level of
right. It's what is it? Is it Akka? Is it? Oh gosh, I'm gonna go look.
Direction you're heading.
I'm going to say you mentioned Akka and Wish Dragons.
Mention it. Blue mentioned it.
No, that's what I'm saying. Is that he's mentioned in the Wish Dragons together.
The worm gods and the wish dragons.
Hey, look, they're the same. Never mind. I'm not even going to get down that path.
Oh, please. I want to get Justin to come on here and do his dragon theory and show him
my brain would break again if he does that stupid dragon theory.
Oh my God.
I want to show him Riven.
Oh God. He would
the full body picture
out.
Of Riven?
Oh my God.
I will say this, in all honesty, the Ahamkara I think could definitely be seen as vampiric, but I kind of look at them more as the parasitic / symbiotic relationship, more so, or just like, or in the same way that I do with the worm gods. I don't feel like the worm gods were really that vampiric so much as they taught the hive to be vampiric in order to
but the
them.
worms that infested the hive, because remember, every single hive has a worm in it.
Mm-hmm.
To feed off of the light in order
you
to
sure about
grow.
Yeah. Every single hive has a worm in it.
Then which ones was Eris talking about?
Sorry, you broke up. What?
Which one is Eris talking about?
Yeah, who are Eris talking about then when she says if they don't have any worms, how do they communicate with the darkness?
Mm-hmm. I know that
when a hive dies, what happens to their worm? And is the worm attached to their soul?
Well, so that's the same thing that happened. Well, that's the whole difference between a descendant hive and the whole regular hive. Mm-hmm. Because ascendant hive would have fed its worm enough to be able to craft a throne world, which would then give the worm within it the same capabilities as the hive shell. I mean, basically, I view the hive as a really, really effed up version of a Russian doll. Where
Matryoshka doll. Yep.
Yeah, where I really question if it's actually the hive that are doing what's being done. You know, it's like, are we playing a really perverted game of Ratatouille here?
Well, one of the things that I had originally talked to Green about way back in the day was just how much of the actual hive was left. Because if you look at the hive, like the acolytes, just the way they're drawn or the way their characters are sculpted in the game, the worm is their head. Like if you look at the worms that are always around on the ground, look at their heads as they evolve and everything. That middle piece very well looks like that's a worm that's just sitting inside of their skull.
That would make sense, because if you do a crit kill on some of them, that's when you get to see the fun little worm.
Yeah, the worm scrunching around.
Scrunchy.
So I don't know. That's one of the things that I was. But yeah, going back to the Ahamkara and the wishes, I think they probably sit more along the lines of parasite / symbiote, more or a symbiotic relationship rather than vampiric.
That's what a vampire is, essentially.
Mm-hmm. It's the reason they call ticks.
Okay, so I don't know. I see in a general scale vampires being parasites, but normally with a parasite or with a symbiote or a symbiotic relationship, there's a benefit to having the host body. The vampire himself or herself or themselves, yes, they are benefiting with the eternal life. Like the actual becoming a vampire is symbiosis or is a symbiosis of sorts, but I don't see vampirism in that. I don't see the acts of vampirism. I see the benefits or the a relatable cause and effect. So it'd be like if becoming an Ahamkara would be similar to being a vampire, in that it gives you both benefits and negatives that end up feeding on things that give you strength. If that makes sense.
Yes.
About the devouring of the ki or the chi. I mean, we kind of talked about how all vampirism in Destiny is basically kind of that Eastern style of vampirism. Is there the consumption of each other's as guardians?
Well, I mean, that goes back
fairly
to
vampiric, even though we're not vampires.
Raz, you want to take that one?
I mean, what was it I said earlier? Where is it? Literally, the Night Stalker tab. I mean, literally the last line. Eat, my friends, eat. We are fucking vampires. Okay, with the whole thing with the void.
Well, no, but I mean, what she's asking about vampires feeding on vampires.
Vampires. Oh, Diablo is so delicious. It's tasty. Do we really want to go into that part?
I mean,
we haven't
my point is that does also exist in vampire mythology.
Yeah, it very much exists. I mean, you get into that whole aspect with the vampires, just like I said earlier, like you're consuming life and knowledge, and like the older you get with some of them, it's the beautiful prize that you want You paint a target on your back and you just run away. The better part, just run away while you can.
It's not like, again, within White Wolf, they present it as, I mean, it's the same as, you know, in today's world, cannibalism would be seen.
Mm-hmm.
Except, I mean, it's much stronger, because you also have a component of power transference, but it would be, it's I mean, it's like you say the Donner Party and the kind of reaction that a lot of people have, that would be very similar to the sense that is in there.
Yeah.
I do not have another on this one unless you guys have something.
I'm just surprised that the topic of Guardians eating other Guardians didn't go way more south than that. I was expecting a lot more.
I am
at the
censoring
end.
myself so
It also
much. Give me
came
some
at the
credit.
end of the episode, so
Yeah.
Raz, is it the Kyujin? Is that the
Kueijin, yeah.
Yeah, Kueijin.
The
that's the
was the eastern.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, the Jade Kingdom, where the chi yin yang balance. That if one's offset, they go like batshit. You know, the Akuma level of.
But they're also the ones that they absorb soul. They don't absorb blood, right?
Yeah, theirs is all chi based, energy based versus blood. The Eastern, the Jade Kingdom courts do energy. Western, aka like the 13 clans and subsect of the bloodline, theirs is all blood and thaumaturgy.
I mean,
I don't want to. That's a whole nother can of worms. Black Flag.
can it be done to Exos? Can the
Can what?
I'm guessing the life stealing.
Yeah, light exists.
The soul.
Anima. I mean, again, anima is the so.
When we're taking the energy from each other and as guardians, we're not taking the soul. We're taking the light, the energy source.
Correct.
That's different.
Yes. So like you have it's basically a triangle, right? You have the physical body, you have anima, and then you have what's referred to as nous. Nous would be the soul. That's the actual in the Aristotelian model. And there's some further divisions, but basically you have the physical body, you have the anima, which is literally animating spirit, and then you have the nous, which is the seat of consciousness or the soul. I want to call it spirit, but it's not. There's a differentiation between spirit and soul. Spirit, everything has a spirit. Grass has a spirit. Grass does not have a soul. Because the spirit is literally the animating force of the universe. It's the harmony from the music of the spheres that is moving everything. But that is not to say that everything has nous to direct it. Another way to look at it is it translates really nicely into the Freudian breakup of ego, superego, and id. Your id would be your body, your physical form. The superego is going to be your nous, and your ego is going to be, your superego would be the anima, and the ego would be the nous. The anima.
It's like, wait a second.
Right, yeah, I flipped them. Forgive me, I'm doing all this off the top of my head. The anima pushes the body. It actually is like when I move my hands, that's in the Aristotelian model, that's the anima.
Okay.
The nous is the carriage driver that is telling the body, like it's telling the body through the reins, which are the anima, where to go.
Right.
It's directing where we go through the anima.
Question on that then: are there vampires that go out that absorb the nous? Then
you want to talk about the soul suckers?
Well, technically, with creatures that would have both anima and nous, so anima and nous are in the Aristotelian model kind of intertwined. Like you can't, for humans, you don't really have one without the other. Like humans, and there's a couple other like animals that he viewed as on a certain, there's a certain level at which you have like nous shows up basically. Like a fish doesn't have nous in the Aristotelian model because it's just, it's just base. I'm going to eat. Like that's not nous. So like when you have a vampire that consumes another human, yes, actually, arguably the vampires would be only consuming nous. That's why Greek vampires are really weird. Because if I remember, and this is me trying to remember this, Greek vampires are one of the few mythologies where they can't consume animals. Like they can consume them, but it actually doesn't give them any benefit.
Sustenance.
Like it's like it's empty calories. Like for a vampire, basically. So whereas like Dracula can, or sorry, go for it.
Mm-hmm. Well, so the empty calories thing that you're talking about, and this is kind of where I was tying Flag was saying, when it comes to exos, because I know that there's the whole rabbit hole that you can go down of, the memories where they came from. If the person the memories came from got resurrected,
right, yeah.
You get where I'm going with that. Mm-hmm. So with an exo, granted the light is with the traveler once the ghost wakes them up. What is the light connected to with an exo that could be drained from them?
That would be anima.
I mean, that would be the anima, right? Okay.
Right. Well, and then
And does a machine have anima? That's another thing where it's like
everything has anima.
Everything
if it
has
moves,
anima.
It has anima. Like that's the thing with Aristotelians. Like it's very it's literally just energy. It's like rocks have anima. They just don't have a lot of it. Right. Think about it. Rocks technically move. Everything moves. It's just they don't move really fast. Like it was very the entire universe had a mind of its own. That was the entire point of the music of the spheres from an Aristotelian point of view, was that everything was being orchestrated by the first mover, right? Everything ultimately was going back to that concept of it is an orchestra that's being played. Everything is being done in tandem for a reason that goes back to the logic that if you could track it back, it would all make sense. The whole thing of, and so with that being said, everything did have a spirit. Not everything had a soul. And that was where your concept of Aristotle's like idea of like the Elysian fields and things like that, that's where they could coexist with saying that a rock had a spirit, but it wasn't going to, like, if you destroyed the rock, you weren't going to send the rock to heaven because that's not the part that got sent. That's not the eternal part. And then you also had like things like the world soul, which is a little bit later in his like concept, but like, the Gaia forms is what's referred to. And that's a whole different level. It's not really nous. It's not really, and that's again, that goes into like, there was a division within nous that he used to explain like habitual actions and, conscious decisions to choose something. Right. Like he breaks it. It's really cool, but he does go down pretty far into describing the psychological construction of choices themselves. Yeah. Sorry. Lamia and Strix. Yeah. Sorry. I saw Raz's Lamias are just weird as Lamias are weird. They're
Lamia are
weird.
Amazing though.
I mean, they're interesting, but they're weird. Like they're out there. But but you're going to split hairs because eventually they didn't really quite terminology shift them as vampires. Like that went off on the warlocky, wizardy, witchy thing with the Greek side of it, though. Right.
They were
nothing wrong with warlocks.
Well, because Lamia was Lamia was a daemon, I think, right, in mythology.
Daughter.
And she nom-nommed kids is what she did.
Yeah, they devoured children.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, trying to remember the rest of it. Yeah,
Green. Did we answer all your questions? By giving you more questions?
Hey, I ran out of questions a while ago.
I gave up.
Oops.
Wow, black flag. Can't handle the truth. It drives.
Mm-hmm.
So, shout outs.
Raz, you want to go first?
No.
Don't
make me do stuff.
Fine. Let's see. Do shout outs to Ishtar Collective for tonight, because I've been perusing all their stuff and it never ceases to how much stuff goes into that website and how much organization is there to be able to find the kind of lore entries and everything that you need, especially trying to go through and find everything for vampires within Destiny that you would not even think remotely to have anything in Destiny automatically just pop into your head regarding it. But the way they have it organized and the way the keywords and everything work, it makes it so much easier to do any kind of real research into the Destiny lore. So definitely a huge shout out to them for running the website the way they do.
Indeed. Raz, what about you?
Two.
Or Green? Did we get Green back?
I think. Maybe.
Maybe.
Is that? Yeah.
Is it?
Raz, what about you?
Connection isn't that strong right now.
There you go.
Sorry.
There we go.
The internet is being weird. Shout outs to the gaming community that continues to see things objectively. There are those of you out there. Thank you very much. Shout outs to also devs who keep an eye on the community and are the quiet voices in the background encouraging us. Things happened in the community this week. Just wanted to watching. We see you. Good job.
That's not creepy. Raz, what about you?
It could be the other way. It could be the other way around.
Well, that's
Y'all
true.
booped on the snoot.
Booped on the snoot.
Booped on the snoot.
We're watching you.
I will toast to
Turning the shower back on.
Oh, Lord. Terms of service. I will toast to the visual parts of the community, all the artists out there. They give us wonderful, great things to stare at, to fantasize about, and make things a little bit brighter in the mornings. What was that?
Nothing.
That's not
Mara, what?
But no. Did Mara? No. But no. A serious.
I'm all about the Zhur art anymore.
Yeah, we ain't going there.
Community, step it up. I need more Petra.
And before we go down that rabbit hole too far, I wanted to actually give a big shout out to both of you guys, Raz and Wicked, for agreeing to allow us to torture you, or volunteer
Seriously
to torture us. I think it's more of you torturing us. But anyways,
I don't know about that. But I mean,
But also, big shout out to Wicked for the lore bites. I know that's a strenuous schedule to do. So
it is
big.
I'm trying to get everything back into getting everything on a normal release, especially with having just moved into the new house. So it's work. It's getting itself back to that point.
Yeah. So, but with all that being said, again, want to thank you for your time. And until next time, remember, with wisdom we conquer, stand strong, stand tall, and keep exploring. This guy can go fuck his hat.
Really?
Yeah. Goddamn, out of my way. With that, we'll begin to wrap the chat up. Thank you again to those over on Twitch for coming to spend your evening with us. If you'd like to join us for the live streaming of the episodes, please be sure to give us a follow over on twitch.tv/FocusedFireChat. Links to all our episode archives can be found at www.thelorenetwork.com. Please be sure to email us at focusedfirechat@gmail.com with any comments and or questions for the team concerning the podcast, and let us know how we're doing by giving us some feedback and a rating over on iTunes as well. So until next time, focus your fire, and may your light shine bright.